Hello and welcome to today's video, where we'll be delving into one of the most fascinating and controversial periods of medieval history, the Crusades. These religious wars, spanning nearly 2 centuries, had a profound impact on the relationship between Western Europe and the Islamic world that continues to resonate even today. As we explore this complex topic, we'll examine the origins, key events, and lasting legacy of the Crusades. Now, before we dive in, it's important to understand that the Crusades were not a single unified campaign. Rather, they were a series of military expeditions launched over a period of about 200 years, from 1095 to 1291. The primary objective of these campaigns was to recapture Jerusalem and the surrounding Holy Land from Muslim rule. However, as we'll see, the motivations and outcomes of the Crusades were far more complex than a simple religious conflict. Deus vult, God wills it. The story of the Crusades begins in 1095, when Pope Urban II made a passionate appeal at the Council of Clermont. Urban called upon Western Christians to embark on an armed pilgrimage to Jerusalem, framing it as both a religious duty and an opportunity for salvation. This call to arms was met with an enthusiastic response across Western Europe, with people from all social strata rallying to the cause. What's particularly interesting about the First Crusade is the diverse range of motivations that drove people to join. While religious fervor was certainly a significant factor, we can't overlook the more worldly incentives. For many nobles and knights, the crusade offered a chance for adventure, glory, and potentially new lands and wealth. The Pope's promise of remission of sins was also a powerful draw, essentially offering a spiritual clean slate to participants. Let those who have been accustomed unjustly to wage private warfare against the faithful now go against the infidels and end with victory this war, which should have been begun long ago. Let those who for a long time have been robbers now become knights. Let those who have been fighting against their brothers and relatives now fight in a proper way against the barbarians. The First Crusade was, somewhat surprisingly, a success. Despite being poorly organized and facing numerous challenges, the Crusaders managed to capture Jerusalem in 1099. This victory led to the establishment of 4 Crusader states in the Levant: the Kingdom of Jerusalem, the County of Edessa, the Principality of Antioch, and the County of Tripoli. These states would become the focal point of Crusader activity in the Holy Land for the next 2 centuries. The establishment of the Crusader states marked a significant shift in the balance of power in the Near East. These Latin Christian enclaves, surrounded by Muslim territories, faced constant challenges to their survival. The Crusader states were a fascinating experiment in medieval colonialism, blending Western European feudal structures with local Eastern traditions. One of the most remarkable aspects of the Crusader states was their military architecture. The castles and fortifications built during this period, such as the impressive Crac des Chevaliers in Syria, represent a unique fusion of Western and Eastern defensive designs. These structures were not just military strongholds, but also centers of administration and symbols of Latin Christian presence in a predominantly Muslim region. A stronghold of such a size that it is impossible to imagine it larger, and so perfectly fortified that it could be held forever. However, the Crusader states were always in a precarious position. Their survival depended on a constant influx of new Crusaders from Europe and support from the Italian maritime republics, particularly Venice, Genoa, and Pisa. As Muslim powers in the region began to unite and strengthen, particularly under leaders like Nur ad-Din and Saladin, the Crusader states found themselves under increasing pressure. The fall of Jerusalem to Saladin in 1187 sent shockwaves through Western Christendom and prompted the launch of the Third Crusade. This campaign is perhaps the most famous of all the Crusades, largely due to the legendary figures involved: Richard the Lionheart of England, Philip II of France, and Frederick Barbarossa of the Holy Roman Empire. The Third Crusade was a massive undertaking, involving the largest armies of the entire crusading period, However, it was plagued by setbacks from the start. Frederick Barbarossa, arguably the most powerful European monarch of his time, drowned while crossing a river in Anatolia, throwing the German contingent into disarray. The remaining Crusader forces, led by Richard and Philip, managed to recapture the city of Acre, but tensions between the two kings led to Philip's early departure from the Holy Land. If I had been present, things would have turned out differently. Despite these challenges, Richard the Lionheart proved to be a formidable military leader. His victories at Arsuf and Jaffa, coupled with his strategic acumen, forced Saladin to the negotiating table. The resulting Treaty of Jaffa in 1192 allowed Christian pilgrims access to Jerusalem, even though the city remained under Muslim control. While falling short of the Crusades' original goals, this compromise did secure some gains for the Christian side and helped stabilize the remaining Crusader states for a time. As we move into the 13th century, we see a shift in the nature and focus of the Crusades. The Fourth Crusade, launched in 1202, is a prime example of how far the movement had strayed from its original purpose. Instead of liberating Jerusalem, the Crusaders ended up sacking Constantinople, the capital of the Christian Byzantine Empire. This shocking turn of events not only failed to advance the crusading cause, but also severely damaged relations between the Eastern and Western Christian churches. The later Crusades increasingly focused on Egypt, seen as the key to controlling the Holy Land. The Fifth Crusade, for instance, attempted to capture the port of Damietta as a stepping stone to Jerusalem. Despite initial success, the campaign ended in failure when the Crusaders, against the advice of their leaders, attempted to march on Cairo. This pattern of initial gains followed by overreach and defeat would be repeated in subsequent Crusades. Those who have been accustomed to make private war against the faithful are now to make a successful war against the infidels. Those who have been fighting against their brothers and relatives are now to fight in a proper way against the barbarians. Those who have been serving as mercenaries for small pay are now to obtain the eternal reward. Those who have been wearing themselves out in both body and soul are now to labour for a twofold honour. The 7th and 8th Crusades, led by Louis IX of France, marked the last major attempts by European monarchs to reclaim the Holy Land. Despite Louis's piety and determination, both Crusades ended in failure. The fall of Acre in 1291, the last major Crusader stronghold in the Levant, effectively marked the end of the Crusader states and the crusading era in the Holy Land. As we look back on the Crusades, it's clear that their impact extended far beyond the military campaigns in the Holy Land. These expeditions had profound and lasting effects on both Western Europe and the Islamic world, shaping cultural, economic, and political developments for centuries to come. In Europe, the Crusades contributed to significant social and economic changes. The need to finance these expensive military expeditions led to innovations in banking and taxation. The increased contact with the East also stimulated trade, introducing new goods and ideas to European society. Moreover, the Crusades played a role in the weakening of feudalism, as many nobles sold their lands to finance their participation, inadvertently strengthening royal authority. The Crusades were the international politics of the Middle Ages, the business of kings and knights and popes and bishops. In the Islamic world, the memory of the Crusades has had a lasting impact on perceptions of the West. While the immediate Muslim response to the Crusades was relatively muted, later Islamic thinkers and leaders have often invoked the Crusades as a symbol of Western aggression and imperialism. This historical memory has been used to frame modern conflicts and tensions between the Islamic world and the West. It's crucial to approach the legacy of the Crusades with nuance and critical thinking. While they've often been romanticized or demonized, the reality is far more complex. The Crusades were a product of their time, reflecting the religious fervor, political ambitions, and social structures of medieval Europe. Understanding them in their historical context is key to grasping their true significance and avoiding simplistic interpretations that can fuel modern-day prejudices or conflicts. The The Crusades are one of the longest and most bitter episodes in the history of medieval Europe. They were fought by men who sincerely believed they were doing God's work, and their name remains associated with both great cruelty and great faith. As we conclude our exploration of the Crusades, it's worth reflecting on the enduring fascination these events hold for us today. The Crusades represent a unique intersection of religion, politics, and culture that continues to captivate historians and the public alike. They remind us of the power of ideology to mobilize people across vast distances and the complex interplay between faith and violence that has shaped much of human history. One of the most intriguing aspects of studying the Crusades is how they challenge our modern sensibilities. The idea of a holy war sanctioned by religious authorities is largely alien to contemporary Western thought, yet it was a powerful motivating force in the medieval world. This disconnect forces us to grapple with how profoundly different medieval worldviews were from our own, and how careful we must be in applying modern judgments to historical events. The Crusades were a series of wars that were fought in the name of God, but were really about power, wealth, and glory. They were a turning point in the history of the Middle East and Europe, and their legacy continues to shape our world today. As we've seen, the Crusades had far-reaching consequences that extended well beyond their immediate military objectives. They fostered cultural exchange between East and West, stimulated trade and economic development, and left an indelible mark on the collective memories of both Christian and Muslim societies. Understanding the Crusades and their legacy is crucial for anyone seeking to comprehend the historical roots of many contemporary global issues. In closing, I hope this exploration of the Crusades has provided you with a deeper understanding of this complex and influential period in history. The story of the Crusades is not just one of battles and conquests, but of cultural encounters, religious zeal, and the profound ways in which ideologies can shape human societies. As we continue to grapple with issues of religious conflict and cultural misunderstanding in our own time, the lessons of the Crusades remain as relevant as ever. The Crusades were not just a series of battles, but a clash of civilizations that shaped the course of history for centuries to come.